Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfast. Welcome to Rauta. This time it's all about albums from year 2022. Those of you who have been following the channel for quite some time know that I have had the habit of listing the best albums of any given year since the start of the channel about 6 years ago. And as all of you know, probably, I assume that you know, always when those lists are being compiled, you pretty much always know that you're gonna miss some albums that came out during the year you're talking about, but you really didn't have the time for various reasons. I mean, it's not really a secret. It's more like a no-brainer that more albums came out than anybody in the world has time to go through. I mean, sometimes there are days when Metal Archives list something like 90 albums per day coming out. So it's more like a factual thing rather than an opinion that it's impossible to listen to all the good albums, all the metal albums, or whatever albums that come out. So it doesn't really matter how many reviews or opinions you do, how many albums you listen to, you're not able to listen to them all. And because of that, I have had this habit for a few years that after a few months of the years has been ended and my list for like top 10 albums have been going out, I've been doing some kind of missed jewels, missed gems of the given year because it's more likely so that I want to give a little bit of a shout out to these particular bands and their releases, which were not here in time in order to make, like, have a chance, have to go at the top 10 list of any given year. So here we are taking a look now that almost 6 months have passed since year 2022, and during those months I have had more time to go through my review pile and to go through some of the 2022 releases that I didn't have the possibility to review last year. Obviously there are still a lot of albums that either didn't come here at all or I missed because, like I said, you really don't have the time for reading, or because the information goes under the radar, so to speak. So it's not like this is gonna just fix everything, but these are some of the albums which I think need a kind of a shout out because they won't be definitely listed when it comes to time to sum up year 2023 by the end of this year. So these are some of the bands which I am going to mention, and this Cold Spring site here is just as a backdrop because, in my opinion, the best album is right there. This could have been the album of the year for year 2022, but it came way too late to the party, being a late 2022 release. But let's get back to that in a little bit later. And of course, all these albums I'm going to talk about are something that I have reviewed. So in case you want to go deeper into any of the given releases, you will find information, or then just head on and listen to them right away in case you missed or are not interested in those individual reviews. I've listed these based on my review score, and of course it's just my opinion. You don't really have to give a damn about it. Feel free to disagree, that's the whole point here. But I'm just mentioning some of these names, and I will list these in the description box in case you are missing what I am saying here because of, pronunciation or just unable to listen to certain things or whatever. So let's start with the 8 out of 10 albums which came out in 2022, but were not relisted in the best of the year 2022 lists. I would say Corpsessed did the album called Succumb to Rot during 2020 years, and that was, in my opinion, one of the better, darker death metal albums, along with Desolate Shrine, Fires of the Dying World. Now, what makes it curious is that basically these two bands are from the same Helsinki-based scene, featuring some of the same guys, really. It's a kind of a death metal scene with a little bit overlapping with black metal, and that scene is filled with lots of talented guys. able to do interesting riffs when it comes to death metal and black metal and beyond or hybrid genres. And also these guys, there are lots of guys who know how to record different instruments, how to do production, how to do a proper sound for these kind of things. So I'm mentioning these two in conjunction one another because they are kind of like carved from the same tree, just a little bit different approach. Both are, for example, done with really, really good production. They both have really good death metal crawling vocals. They both have kind of a darker end of death metal approach, and yet they are both at the same time kind of a timeless. They might sound modern because of their production, but they are not really something that you can say, yeah, this is so 2022. You can say pretty much that they're like 1998 or I don't know 2003 or so, and both are filled with good songwriting. Maybe not the best of the pile kind of a thing, but definitely something worthwhile taking a look at. And what's more funny is that also the same label, if I remember correctly. Anyway, both Corpsessed and Desolate Shrine are something that you should not miss if you consider yourself a death metal fan. And like I said, unfortunately, they couldn't make it to the list because I got to review them a little bit later on. But something that you should take a look at and listen to in case you like darker end of death metal. Now, from the black metal side of things, one of the better ones was this band called In Twilight's Embrace Lifeblood. That is a band that sounds like it's not even a black metal to begin with if you just really think about the name, and I mentioned that in my review as well, because the band started in a different genre and later on evolved into something that is kind of a catchy and interesting melodic black metal. Now, I wouldn't say this is 5-star an album, but definitely a good one, which I mentioned in the review as well, and also doing kind of a interesting take of black metal in the sense of it doesn't really sound like the rest of us. But then again, there are parts where you just feel like, yeah, there are certain kind of similarities with a lot of bands out there. So it's kind of a filled halfway with some familiarity and at the same time sounding somewhat unique. Really good of an album, which I think should get your attention if you're into black metal. From grind department, now that's a rarity for me because I don't really like most grind metal bands that much. I mean, I'm very, very okay to listen to lots of grind bands or death grind or grindcore, whatever, but most of them just, don't tick the right boxes. So when I got the chance to listen to Inferia from Finland's latest album, Cumpaign, I was really, really delighted because I've seen Inferia live and I remember they have done interesting albums in the past as well. And this was fierce, aggressive, and at the same time very humorous. And that's all very, very well balanced in terms of doing kind of a grind or death grind of an album. And those people who are into grind, I think they should not miss it. Not in terms of live, not the album. So that is definitely something worth taking a look, unless you are allergic to grind. This is coming from a guy who isn't into grind for most albums anyway. From the more melodic, kind of a folkier end of extreme metal, I'm using quotation marks because Månegarm isn't exactly that much extreme. But there is some black metal overlapping with the music and all, but more into to kind of a Viking metal themes and all that stuff. I think Månegarm did a great stuff with this. I don't know even how to pronounce this anymore. But yeah, how to look at it. I just have to read it. Ynglingaättens or something like that. Now, this is also from one of those genres that I'm not too comfortable most of the time. It's more like, I mean, I do like some of the folkier parts. I do a lot of pagan metal and all that stuff. But most of them kind of they lack the extreme ways of doing music, and also they are not that catchy. They're sometimes way too folky. Same kind of, also sometimes way too mainstreamish with their ways to just like trying to I don't know, entertain people. But I don't know, Monogarm somehow managed to put the puzzle pieces in the right direction and the right places. And I'm like, yeah, this is something like very enjoyable, even if it's a genre I'm not a big fan of. And I remember that band being kind of a B-grade band for a lot of years, but I think they have really improved their sound and songwriting overall. And to me, it was kind of surprising to hear how good that album is. So even if you're not fan of the given styles, much like me, not in big numbers, I think that's something worthwhile taking a shot. Maybe it will surprise you positively, maybe it not, but I don't know. There is something interesting going on. And probably of all these 8 out of 10 piles would be Nordjevel with Gnavhòl, the third album, which I got to review just recently. And very good timing because they're performing at Steelfest. And yeah, that's part of the reason why I wanted to interview them at Inferno Festival also, so you will find the interview as well. That is something that is kind of like a better era of nowadays modern Norwegian black metal bands. I mean, like, a lot of old Norwegian black metal bands are not exactly anymore what they used to be back in the 90s making fierce albums. This applies to most Norwegian black metal bands these days. I'm talking about the earlier. Luckily, there are bands like Horde or Nordjevel, etc., which are indeed, you know, keeping the torch alive coming from Norway. So kind of a new bands featuring old guys and doing the stuff like it used to be. So Nordjevel is definitely one of those bands you don't want to miss. Let's put it this way. But then the two best ones from last year, which didn't make it to the list, I would say this other one from Norway called Khold with Svartsyn totally surprised me positively. I mean, I liked Khold since the very, very early years. I mean, since the first album. And when I saw them play in Norway, something like 2004 at Inferno, I liked them. I liked them even more maybe after that, listening to the album because their mid-tempo kind of a hypnotic pattern songwriting was something that wasn't that common. And they made the sound of their own, even if they had this kind of pre-Khold versions with Toulouse, another Norwegian old school band. But I think Khold kind of improved that sound overall. But later on, the band kind of vanished from the map and they went on decline before that. So I was more like, okay, let's call it a day with Khold and maybe just go with the early albums. So when Svartsyn, maybe their best album or one of the better ones, came out, I was like, what the hell? Suddenly these guys are back after, going in that decline phase and basically vanishing from the map of the earth. And I was like, man, this is some good news for those who liked Khold already more than 20 years ago. So if you missed Svartsyn album year 2022, you're in for a treat. That is, if you can handle mid-tempo black metal done in very, very cold ways. A great album indeed. Now, the best of the pile is indeed what I have here for backdrop. It's Lull with that space somewhere. Obviously, this is not metal at all. This is dark ambient in a very, very minimal ways, which is more like marginal. Already this cover tells you what this music is all about. It's very, very calm waters. There's not much coloring happening. There are not much waves or shapes or storms about. It's more about this dead calm waters, which is just going to just, I don't know, drown you in the ambient soundscape, which is something that I totally love. Now, I've been a Lull fan for about, I don't know, 2 decades, more or less, maybe more, but still. And I know this is the kind of a drony dark ambient, which is not for everybody. First of all, it's way too minimal. It avoids rhythmic patterns, it avoids melodies, singing, and beyond. It avoids traditional songwriting, which is why I love it so much. I know I praised this already in my review some few months ago, and I still want to praise it even more because this could have been, or it's definitely one of the contenders for year 2022, the best album. So this is definitely a 5-star album for me, and it's like a great comeback for Lull because it was gone from the face of the earth for so many years, and now we got to celebrate once again this great artist here. And in case you missed it, or you're not really interested in dark ambient in like big scale, this is something where you should probably give it a new chance. Maybe it's way too marginal, way too minimal, way too drony for you, but in case you wanna embrace something different, I urge you, with headphones or without, I don't really care. Both ways work, just a little bit different. But I urge you to drown yourself in Lull's music. And this album is as good as any other Lull album to begin with because they're all great. And this is something that you might want to wait for the sun come down and your house or apartment get just dark, turn off the lights, maybe with your smartphone or computer, that's the only light source in case you're doing something while listening to the music, that is, and just immerse yourself into this beautiful yet very haunting and drony dark ambient, and then you get to celebrate the feeling. In my opinion, the perfect kind of a nocturnal soundscape. So there it is. So these are the gems I think you should give a go when thinking about year 2022. Like which were the best albums you probably missed, much like me, or maybe my list has something you missed, and some of these albums are the ones that you actually heard. Doesn't really matter. The point here is music doesn't get old. Doesn't matter if it came out last year or 10 years ago. Good albums are always good albums, and good music is always good music. That is something that should go without saying. So, enough my nonsense, enough my rambling. Go listen to some of these albums mentioned here. I would say listen to them all and immerse yourself with some good music and enjoy. I hope this video was worthwhile checking out, and if you like my suggestions or recommendations, give this one a like, or maybe even comment if you have something to comment about the albums or the content of the video. Thank you for your time, and see you soon with more videos coming your way.